Hello and welcome to Venslov Academy. This is part 11 in our network basic tutorial. If you haven't yet seen the 10 first parts, I highly recommend you to do so to get the full understanding of what this is. At least you need to watch part 10 because this is a following lecture of our VPN tunneling discussion from part 10. So in this section we will focus on the protocols used in order to establish a VPN connection. So VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network. There are several ways that a VPN can be established, and most of us are actually having a VPN running whenever we are visiting a banking site or a grocery site, or for example like Amazon. When you're visiting Amazon, you should see that it has HTTPS, meaning that your connection is secured, because when you're buying something on Amazon and logging into Amazon, you don't want anyone to see your login credentials or your card information. So it's important that the data is encrypted and hidden such that it is only you and the Amazon server which can read this information. So this is what is called VPN web, and it uses web protocols to establish this virtual private network. And we have several protocols in place to do that. We have some older ones and some newer ones. The oldest one is the SSL, which is Secure Socket Layer, and that is the web-based VPN HTTPS, as we see right here, whereas this is unencrypted and does not use any of these encryption protocols. SSL is based on certificates in order to make this mutual authentication of a client and a server. We will be discussing certificates in much more detail in upcoming lectures. But SSL is kind of old school now, and it is replaced in most cases by what is called TLS and more updated versions of TLS like TLS 1.2. So TLS is the transport layer security, and that has more or less replaced SSL entirely. And it is also based on certificates. But as the demand for security increases, we need newer versions, and we need to update the old versions in order to secure that our information is truly encrypted. So now we have moved more and more to TLS 1.2, which enhanced the security that we used in the older protocols, and we are, for example, now having hash checks in place, and hash checking is something that we will also discuss in further lectures like certificates. So this was a short introduction to the web protocols used in order to secure our information. But as you have seen in part 10, VPNs is much more than just entering a website and having our information encrypted. VPN is most commonly referred to as when you are having a virtual private network, which is the name of the VPN. For example, when you're sitting at a hotel on a public network, or you're sitting at Starbucks on a public network, then you want a way to secure your information such that you, for example, can connect to your company resources without having anyone read the information. So you want to be able to sit on your computer on a hotel with public internet and then connect out to the internet and to your company to fetch this resource and get it retrieved without anyone in between this communication road having been able to read and download the information. So what we use for the VPN is L2TP, which is layer 2 tunneling protocol, and that protocol is enable us to carry layer 2 traffic over layer 3. So remember that layer 2 were the layer with MAC addresses, whereas layer 3 was the layer of IPs addresses. If you haven't seen the first lectures, or you simply forgot what the different layers were and the comparison between them, then I recommend you to go watch the 2 first lectures of this course. But even though we have this L2TP protocol, it is not the only part that we need to establish this VPN connection from our client computer to our server, because L2TP does not have encryption by itself. It is basically just what is used for us to transport some information from one point to another, and then we need to use IPSec as our encryption measure and authentication measure. So we are using L2TP with IPSec on top of it. So let's see what this IPSec is. IPSec stands for IP security, and it encrypts data at layer 3, meaning the IP layer. And then we have underneath IPSec we have 4 subprotocols, because IPSec uses these subprotocols to perform its task. We will in the next slide see a graphical illustration of how this works, but first we will go through them. So the first protocol we have is ESP, Encapsulation Security Payload. This is the protocol that encrypts the content, meaning the data that we have, with a symmetric algorithm. This means that both the client and the server will have the same algorithm, such that what is used to encrypt the data can also be used to decrypt the data. Because you cannot just encrypt it on your side and then just hope that the server somehow managed to figure out whatever you encrypted it with. There need to be a correlation between them, and you need to exchange some information for this to work. But ESP is the encryption part. Then we have HA, authentication header. This is a header that is added on to our data package, which have a checksum in it in order for our server or ourselves, when receiving packages again, to check up and secure that no one have tampered with this data. Because if they have, then the checksum and the hash of this authentication header will simply not match, and we know that someone has been trying to manipulate this data, and we either know that our encryption, our private network, has been broken, or something has gone wrong through the way from our point A to point B. Then we have the IP comp, which is the IP payload compression. This is where our payload, meaning our data and our authentication header, is getting compressed such that it is of a smaller size before we send it, because the less data size that we have, the faster it is and the less bandwidth we use. So it is very important that we can compress it as much as possible before we actually send it. And then we have the last protocol, which is the IKE, Internet Key Exchange, and that is the protocol that negotiates the shared secret between us and the receiver. So as I said, in the ESP, the Encapsulating Security Payload, we need to negotiate some shared secret in order for us to be able to encrypt it in one end and for the receiver to decrypt it in the other. So we need to have some common knowledge in order for this to work. So this is basically the 4 subprotocols that IPSec uses. So let's see how this works. So the first thing that we have is the part 1. We need to negotiate a shared secret or key before we can start doing this, such that we have an understanding of what it is used to encrypt and what is needed to decrypt. Once that is in place, we can encrypt the data with ESP. So for example, we have a package right here with the black square. We have data. Then we will encrypt it with this green layer right here. So now this entire data block is encrypted. In the next part we will add this authentication header. So we will add it to the data package, which is encrypted. And at step 4 we will add a new encrypted layer around this entire package, so around the header and around the data, because then the header is encrypted as well, and then there will be a minor header to this encrypted package with the receiver's information, because we need to detail where this is to be sent to. So this is when we are encrypting our data in one end, and then the receiver is getting the package. The first thing that he is going to do is remove the outer encryption layer, so he will remove this blue box right here. Then he will check the header, see if everything is in order, has the data been tampered with, and then it will be removed, so we will take out the header. And then at last he will decrypt the data, so he will encrypt this green box right here and remove it, and then he is capable of reading the exact same data that we started off by sending right here. So this is basically how VPN protocols and the different subprotocols is used to do this entire virtual private network over a public network. But we need one more protocol, and that is the ISAKMP protocol, so the Internet Security Association and Key Management Protocol. It's a very long name, and if you're really into this VPN stuff and you need to go beyond the basic, which this is all about, then I highly recommend you to do some reading of the details of these different protocols, because there's a lot of more into them than just what I have listed right here, but this is the basics. So this protocol is actually used to establish the tunnel, and that is what do the start exchange of keys and provide the tools needed for us to have this tunnel before we can start to use the L2GP protocol and the IPSec on top of that. So this is basically how VPN from client to server over a public network works, and how it is getting encrypted using several sub-protocols. So in the upcoming videos we'll be talking more about hashing and certificates, and then I look forward to see you. Remember to like and subscribe the video, and then I will see you next time here on VPNCHTTPS Academy.